I'm Anthony Newbold. Welcome to A Closer Look. My guest this week is the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honorable Peter Turnquest. Minister, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
People, you represent East Grand Bahama, and I know when most people hear East Grand Bahama, it's just a name. For you, though, that's Pelican Point and Sweetings Key and McLean's Town. That's people who you represent.
Absolutely.
What's it been like for you and them?
It's been a very rough period for us, obviously. We have suffered tremendous loss, not only in property, but in lives. And of course, there are any number of people that are still unaccounted for.
Yeah.
And so it is a deeply sad time for us as we try to pull together the pieces, try to put families back together, and find a way to dig in our spirit to move forward.
Yeah, because as you say, some people are still missing, and most of the structures, they've been flattened.
Absolutely, we have significant damage. And you know, as you say, East Grand Bahama, to a number of people, is just that a name.
Yeah.
But these are very vibrant, very special communities in Grand Bahama that reflect the true spirit of Grand Bahamians, the true spirit of what it is that we call the culture of the Bahamas. And their worlds have been turned upside down.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a lot of effort and a lot of work that needs to be done to bring these communities back together. And I'm very happy, quite frankly, with the resilience that I see, the determination that our people are putting forward in order to get their lives back together. They're not waiting.
Yeah.
You know, they are moving forward and getting it done. We've had tremendous support from the international community,
Right.
who has provided everything from medical care to food to hot meals. We're moving now into a building stage, and we're getting some help in that regard.
Right.
So we're moving along, even as we, you know, continue to again remember those who may still be unaccounted for.
Yeah, because you had what, 55,000, about 5,500 people in your constituency?
Correct. Yep.
Most of them must be accounted for.
Most of them are accounted for. We have some pockets of the constituency that are, quite frankly, unlivable.
Yeah.
And it's not only in the far eastern part of the constituency, but right around the bridge area. And those who might be familiar with the Grand Bahama would know the two bridges that we have that go across the waterway. On both sides of that bridge, there are very vibrant middle-class communities, high-end communities on certain parts of it. And those communities were devastated by storm surge. And so there is significant dislocation throughout the constituency and throughout Grand Bahama period. But
yeah, and I imagine, you know, you're talking about jobs, whether they're working, right now most people are really trying to make sure they have some place to live more than anything else.
Indeed, and that has been a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that has been a challenge.
As opposed to, again, people looking for jobs. At some point they're going to have to start doing that as well.
We are happy to say that there are some of these businesses that are reopening. We're starting to see the green shoots, if you will.
Yeah.
And we certainly want to thank those businesses that have come back and have started to operate again. Because as you say, it provides the opportunity for these residents to earn an income such that they can help themselves.
Yeah.
And we can get commerce going again and bring some normalcy to our community. It is going to take a lot of courage, a lot of fortitude and commitment and discipline to get ourselves back up on our feet. And it starts with our entrepreneurs, and we're happy that they are, particularly our small and medium-sized enterprises, are reopening and engaging the community again.
So we talk about what happened in your community and the devastation. South Riding Point is in your constituency. Equinor oil spill. What's happening with that?
So Equinor has done a good job in cleaning up most of the area that was contaminated, and it was a significant spill. We are pleased so far with the effort. We await testing of the groundwater to ensure that there is no seepage into the groundwater. Initial reports are that they do not believe that there is any contamination, just based upon the condition of the soil that has been removed. We continue to test for air pollution to ensure that there is nothing beyond normal in the air. So far, they've done a reasonable job. I'd leave it to the technical experts to assess the overall quality of the cleanup and the timeliness and all the rest of it. But from my observation, they have certainly been engaged, and they have not shirked away from their responsibility, and they've brought in the assets and the qualified crews to address the problem.
It's not the kind of thing that can be or would be confrontational, argumentative. I don't know, because I'm thinking you spill a lot of oil in our environment, you got to pay for that.
Yeah. So, again, I'll leave that to the legal and environmental people.
Yeah.
I can only speak to the effort that I can see with the untrained eye, and the level of cooperation that they have demonstrated thus far. They provide daily briefings of their activities, and a full, transparent outline of the issues and the efforts to correct those.
To mediate them. In addition to what you do with your constituency, which of course is your first obligation, you're also the Minister of Finance. What did Dorian do to our finances?
We are obviously faced with a significant challenge. In fact, tomorrow the ECLAC, the UN and the IDB assessment of the damages to the economy will be unveiled or unveiled.
We're talking about the 15th.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
They will give us their impressions of the assessment of economic and infrastructural loss, and what that may mean to the economy going forward from their points of view. Early indications are that it's going to be significant in terms of the overall economic loss. From a tax perspective, a revenue perspective, we estimate it's going to be somewhere around $200 million a shortfall in the revenue for the year as a result of that from the two islands. And the infrastructure cost, again, is being calculated, but be expected to be north of $1 billion. $1
billion. Yeah, which the government can't take on by itself.
No, and of course that is both private and public sector loss. And so we will certainly look towards the insurance industry to see what level of recovery we will receive from the reinsurers. And the infrastructure cost obviously falls to the government, and we are meeting our commitment in that regard through the various financing options that we have engaged.
Okay, we'll talk some more about that, but we got to take a break, and we'll be back with more here on A Closer Look. And Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honorable Peter Turnquest. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Anthony Newbold speaking with Minister of Finance, the Honorable Peter Turnquest. Obviously, Dorian, unprecedented. You can't plan for that kind of event. There was no way you could build any headroom into your budget to absorb some of that.
Yeah. So we've always been mindful of the fact that we have to build in some contingencies in the event that we do have a storm. We recognize that we are in the hurricane belt, and it is inevitable that we're going to get hit with a major storm. It's just a matter of when and where. And so what we've done, what we did in preparation for the hurricane season is what we arranged with the IDB a contingent credit line for $100 million. That in the event of a major disaster, that we can draw on that line for cash flow. Because as you can well imagine, that after a storm, being able to generate the kind of cash that you need in order to address the immediate relief effort is a difficult thing. So we arranged that up front. We also engaged the Caribbean Catastrophic Insurance Fund to ensure that we gave ourselves some level of parametric insurance so that we can hopefully offset some of the cost for the lost infrastructure. And we did a restructuring of that policy to ensure that no matter where in the country a storm may hit, that the chances of a recovery or a claim would be enhanced. And this year we were able to recover $12 million from that insurance program. We also budgeted in to our annual budget $1 million to go towards a disaster relief fund. So this is not just a budget line item, but we actually took the money and put it into, set it aside into a disaster relief fund. And we've done that for the last 2 years, so we had $2 million available for us in that regard. And then in addition to that, you'll remember that last year we put together, put through Parliament a dormant accounts bill, act, that specifically put aside the dormant accounts that we may received from the central bank as a result of the expiration of the time period for dormant accounts to be claimed, specifically reserved it for disaster relief. And so that fund is somewhere around $40 million, and we've allocated $20 million from that fund to help us to address this particular storm. So we've put in place the financial options that were available to us to help to offset what we know would be an eventuality. As you say, no one could have anticipated that it would be this significant, right. Hitting two of our islands at the same time. And so it does leave a funding gap from what we anticipate will be the capital requirement in order to restore the infrastructure and to assist in offsetting some of the human needs of our populations in these two islands. And so it is likely that we're going to have to look at some financing, and we will be presenting our fiscal strategy report in a couple of weeks, and that will outline where we see the economy today and the outlook for the remainder of this fiscal year as a result of the adjustments that are going to be necessary to take account of the shortfall in revenue, as I mentioned, and the increase in expenditure that is going to be required to address the needs following this storm.
Tell me about the dormant accounts for a moment. These dormant accounts are primarily, they're coming from where? Whose accounts are they?
So what happens is at every financial institution, they are required to transfer to the central bank any account or any funds that are unaccounted for that on an account that may not be active for a period, I think it's 7 years. So they would transfer those funds to the central bank. The central bank is required to hold those funds for another, I can't remember the amount of years, but for another a number of years, I think it's 12. In the event that somebody claims those funds, at the expiration of that time period, then those funds will be transferred to the government. And as I said, the government has, in law, indicated that those funds will be reserved to be used for disaster relief and put aside in a disaster relief fund. So that's what we have done.
And those accounts, again, those Bahamians say, listen, don't take our money.
Right, and so the important point to remember or to point out is that even after the funds have been transferred to the government, there's still a period and a process where persons can come and claim these funds. After that additional period, however, there is no further claim. Most of the funds, the public would be interested to know that most of the funds are not owned by Bahamians. Most of the funds is actually foreign owned accounts. We don't know what happened to the people. The funds were not claimed. We've tried, and the financial institution in the first instance would have tried to contact beneficiaries, tried to contact the owners from all of the relevant address or information that they have, and they've been unsuccessful. So this is not a confiscation of any asset or confiscation of any account. This is only after multiple and many levels of attempts to reach the beneficial owners of those accounts.
Abaco, Grand Bahama, your second and third largest revenue earners, sources of revenue for the government of the Bahamas. You have to do all kinds of things to replace what they otherwise would bring to the economy. How soon are you projecting either of those two islands will begin to give you some of that revenue that you lost?
Right. So the Prime Minister has declared both Grand Bahama and Abaco as special economic zones.
Right.
And there are certain incentives and concessions that are attached to that designation. And we'll be bringing that to Parliament, that order to Parliament very shortly, that will outline specifically what those incentives are. But the whole idea is to give tax relief to those residents in those two islands, to allow them some breathing space in order to rebuild and to reconstruct their businesses and their lives. It means, though, that there is going to be a revenue shortfall coming out of those two islands. And as I indicated earlier, it's estimated to be somewhere around $200 million. This relief is projected to last through June of this year, June 30th of this fiscal year. So it's June 30th of 2020.
2020.
Which is the end of this fiscal budget year.
Right.
And at that time, in the presentation of the next budget, we will consider the status of the recovery. We will consider the need for us to continue with the broad incentives that we are going to outline, or whether we need to scale it back and give more targeted incentives to stimulate those areas that may still be challenged. But overall, we understand and appreciate that this has been a significant event, that the community needs assistance from the government in order to restore itself, and we're going to give it that breathing space to be able to do that.
You in Grand Bahama specifically, and let's talk about Grand Bahama for a while, you've been having a hard time for a while, but you also have some bright lights maybe on the horizon, whether it's Grand Lucaim, whether it's the Carnival projects.
Okay.
So what you otherwise may not have given to the national economy, you might be able to do that sooner than you had anticipated.
Well, we are very optimistic. As you rightly say, Grand Bahama has been going through a very tough time since 2004, the last Hurricane and Jane hurricanes, and the recovery has been slow. However, it has been positive. And we are very excited about the current developments with the Carnival Cruise Port. Carnival has been fantastic in respect to being a partner to us in this whole recovery effort, and they're doing tremendous support, not only in terms of helping to bring emergency relief aid to the residents, but they're now looking at schools and at the hospital and making tangible contributions to getting those vital pieces of infrastructure back up and going. And so we owe them a tremendous vote of thanks, and we certainly appreciate every effort that they've given. Likewise, Royal Caribbean and all of the other cruise lines, as well as other NGOs that have come along and partnered with us to help us to move this process forward from the recovery to now the reconstruction phase. And in that light, Carnival has given its full 100% support to its project, the new cruise port,
Right.
and that is going to go forward. We have the Royal Caribbean and ITM proposal for the Grand Lucaim, which has been a bit delayed, thrown off track as a result of the hurricane.
Right.
But it's back, and we expect that to be done before the end of the year or shortly thereafter.
And keep your thought, because we got to take another break, and we'll
Sure.
continue when we come back. You're watching A Closer Look. I'm Anthony Newbold, speaking with Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honorable Peter Turnquest. Welcome back to A Closer Look. Anthony Newbold speaking with the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Peter Turnquest, and we talking about the projects that are happening in Grand Bahama, which
Right.
You need them to happen.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And again, we're very excited about the opportunities. The last project that I would mention is that the medical school that has been recently announced, which I think is going to provide a tremendous stimulus for us in terms of the construction activity to get that campus up and going, as well as the opportunities for residents to rent accommodations and provide services to the students that will come. And so we're very excited about that. Grand Bahama is ideally suited for educational tourism. And so we're going to expand upon this and hopefully use this as a leverage to invite others to come along with other specialty type technical opportunities for education. In addition to that, our existing plant, our industrial plant, is back up and running and fully engaged. All of the employees, as I understand it, are back to work. We are very, very happy that the shipyard in particular is back to operation. As you know, we lost one of the major docking facilities there, but they are back in operation and servicing the cruise ships that come for repair. And so we're excited about the possibility. And as you said, we anticipate that we will be able to get back to some sense of normalcy in a relatively short period of time with all of these projects kicking off. Individually, it's going to be a little rough for the population because we have to consider the accommodations and how we're going to and what we're going to allow to be rebuilt.
Yeah, let me ask you that while you're talking about that, and ask you about some tax, but let me ask you about that. Have the people who lived in your constituency, has there been any discussion about possible relocation, or people are saying, we're going to rebuild here?
The people in East End proper, they're going to rebuild. They are not leaving their communities.
Okay.
And so there's no doubt that those communities will come back up. The question about that is just that, as the government, what do we want to see rebuilt? Because the fact of the matter is that we are now faced with a different paradigm in respect to climate change and what that means. And so we want to encourage resilience building, not to build in the same way that we've built before, to respect the fact that storm surge is real, and it may mean that we need to elevate some of our structures. We need to build them in a different way so that they can withstand these increased wind loads. And so we're in the process with the Ministry of Works and the Ministry for Disaster Preparedness, Reconstruction and Recovery to design what that may look like, what those technical points ought to look like, and ensure that we give our people the best chance to survive the next storm with less damage. In the near Freeport, Lakaya area, there are some real questions there. Because those communities are primarily along the waterways, right. And so again, I think some people are making some real decisions about what they want to do there. But I think the answer again is that we're going to have to look at some elevated structures because the ones that were elevated actually did much better than those that were built on
flat ground.
Correct.
Dorian played havoc with everything, including the country's finances, obviously, as we've been talking about. Are there some major projects, government commitments that you're going to have to look at, that you've begun to look at because you say, man, we were going to give you $5 million, it's going to have to be $2.5 million? Yeah,
we have invited all of the ministries and agencies to look at their budgets, to see where there are areas that are of priority but may not be as critical as others, to see where we can realize some savings this year and hopefully put some of that onto the agenda for next year. Saying that though, we were very diligent in developing this year's budget to ensure that we stayed on track with our fiscal plan, as well as to ensure that we were being very disciplined about the projects that we are putting forward. So there was not a lot of room, quite frankly, for us to maneuver. But nonetheless, in keeping with the Prime Minister's mandate, we are looking at all of the projects with a critical eye to ensure that we are making wise decisions in respect to investing the monies that is available to us. Because obviously it is in our long-term interest to ensure that we keep our financing cost down so that we don't carry forward into the next generation the cost to maintain and to build infrastructure today.
Looking at a place like Abaco, again, which was such a huge revenue earner, how soon Abaco is able to make that kind of contribution to the national coffers will depend heavily on how quickly the government is able to rebuild the infrastructure, isn't it?
Indeed. And already progress is being made in that regard, both in terms of the water utility and as well as the electrical utility. We have acquired, and if it's not there, it should be there shortly, the equipment that is necessary in order to restring the distribution lines. Already power is being restored to the north, Cooperstown and the area, and as well as to the south. And so Marsh Harbour itself, which was, and the Keys that took the brunt of the storm, may take a little longer, but significant progress is being made, and we certainly hope that we can have that infrastructure back up within a month or certainly 2 months.
And you're going to have your fiscal responsibility report when?
In about, it may be delayed slightly to December 6th, but we are doing our best to get it within the time frame that the legislation mandates that it be presented.
And you will have mid-year budget next year?
In February, we will present our midterm budget. So the fiscal strategy report just outlines the thinking of the government in respect to the principles it wants to follow in developing next year's budget. And so those principles will be outlined. We will outline what we see as the adjustments that are necessary to the consolidation plan to account for the cost, an increased cost of Dorian, and how long we will have to invest to ensure that we get the citizens back up and going and those communities up and going. And then those principles will be passed by the Fiscal Responsibility Council, who will look at it and determine from their critical point of view whether it is reasonable and whether it follows the general principles of fiscal accountability. And then in February, you'll present our mid-year budget, which will incorporate those principles, as well as lead us into the annual budget exercise in May, where the full manifestation of that strategy will be outlined.
20 seconds, no new taxes, right?
No new taxes.
Thank you very much. And thank you for watching A Closer Look. Remember, you can watch us on Facebook and YouTube.